Breaking news into First Take. The Chicago Sky have traded Angel Reese to the Atlanta Dream. Atlanta is sending first-round picks in both 2027 and 2028 to acquire Reese in a 2028 second-round swap.
Angel Reese got traded, and the second she left Chicago, the whole story changed. Not slowly, not quietly, instantly. For 2 years, fans kept hearing that Chicago was not a destination. Too messy, too cold, too unstable, too far away from contention.
Crazy. Now I'm outside chilling, and my phone started ringing off the meter. I'm like, what the hell is happening in the W, bruh? I click on the link. Angel Reese traded. Oh no. I wanted to get everybody on here because when stuff like this happen, a lot of news start coming out as to why she was traded, the rumors behind it. Now we know the Chicago Sky gave up 2 first-round draft picks not even a week ago. They gave up these draft picks not even a week ago. And for them to give up these draft picks and now trade Angel Reese, Chicago in trouble. And we know for a fact there has been many fans wanting their president, I think his name Jonathan or John or something like that, to be fired.
But the moment Angel Reese was out, players suddenly wanted in. Skylar Diggins-Smith came in. Dejonai Carrington came in. Azura Stevens came in, Rikia Jackson arrived, and now the question is impossible to ignore. Was Chicago ever the problem, or was Angel Reese the reason nobody wanted to touch that situation? Because this does not look like a normal trade aftermath. This looks like a franchise finally exhaling. Now, to be fair, if you only looked at Angel Reese on paper, you would think Chicago gave up a star. 2 all-star appearances, double-doubles, rebounding numbers that made her look like one of the most productive bigs in the league.
Now, what does this mean for Angel Reese's career? Because from my understanding, I don't know if any player ever got out of their rookie contract like this. In the WNBA. Have any player ever done this? This is like a new thing. So you mean to tell me you could get drafted by a team, get out of your rookie deal with that team, you completely wasted their draft pick? Because we got to remember, Chicago drafted Angel Reese in the first round. So now they wasted a pick. So not only did they lose those draft picks, they done lost the pick they got to get Angel. We got to talk about that.
But basketball is not played on paper, and if those numbers were truly driving winning, then why did Chicago go 13-27 in her first season, and then somehow get even worse at 10-34 in the next one? That is not a contender taking its lumps. That is a team sinking deeper with the same centerpiece still in place. And that is where this whole thing starts to split in two, because the stat sheet told one story, but the results told another. Even the rebounding numbers need more context. The transcript makes the point that a lot of Reese's offensive boards came on her own misses. Miss, grab it back, go again, grab it back again. Yes, it counts as production. Yes, it boosts the numbers, but it does not always mean the possession was clean, efficient, or helping the team flow. So when people saw the rebound totals and treated them like proof of dominance, Chicago may have been looking at the same possessions and seeing something else entirely. And that is before we even get to the bigger issue, because the real turning point in this story is not the stats. It is the locker room. According to the source material, the tension around Reese was not just rumor, it was building for a while. Courtney Vanderloot, one of the most respected players tied to Chicago basketball, reportedly became part of that tension after comments about age and reliability.
Chicago Sky's second-year superstar Angel Reese has been the talk of women's basketball community for the past several days, ever since she was quoted in the September 3rd Chicago Tribune article calling out her organization for several things, including asserting that she would have no problem leaving the franchise if they didn't improve the roster via free agency. At one point in the article, Reese asserted, quote, "We can't rely on Courtney to come back at the age that she's at. I know she'll be a great asset for us, but we can't rely on that. We need someone probably a little younger with some experience, somebody who's been playing the game and is willing to compete for a championship and has done it before.
Camila Cardoso, who looks much more like the future Chicago actually wants to build around, was described in the transcript as reaching a point where she walked away from a team situation involving Reese. Then came the suspension.
Ocho, Angel Reese got suspended for the first half of a game, saying her teammates suck. The Sky made a statement saying, the Chicago Sky values the safety, respect, and well-being of every player. We are committed to accountability so our players can stay focused on playing basketball. Because of the statements detrimental to the team made by Angel Reese during a league-mandated media, she will not play in the first half of the game September 7th against the Las Vegas Aces. This matter has been handled and resolved internally, and we're moving forward as a team.
And that matters, because franchises do not suspend players for fun. By the time a team gets there, the quiet conversations have already happened. The warnings have already happened. The patience is already gone. That is why this trade feels different. Chicago did not move Angel Reese like a team reluctantly losing a franchise cornerstone. Chicago moved her like a team that had already decided the situation was costing more than it was worth. And the return tells you that too. Atlanta sent future picks, not a proven star, not a major roster piece. Future picks. That is the kind of package teams accept when they want closure more than leverage. If a franchise truly believes a player is central to its future, it usually squeezes for every last ounce of value. It waits, it shops, it negotiates. Chicago did not act like that. Chicago acted like it wanted the chapter over, fast. Then came the most brutal part of the whole story. The second the trade was done, Chicago got active. Skylar Diggins-Smith, a real floor general, came in. Dejanai Carrington, one of the league's toughest perimeter defenders, came in. Azura Stevens, a veteran who understands winning basketball, came in. Rickea Jackson, a young scorer with real upside, came in. And what makes this hit so hard is not just the names, it is the timing. These players did not need weeks. They did not hesitate. They did not look at Chicago and run the other way. They came quickly. So that old excuse that nobody wanted Chicago, that story died the second Angel Reese was gone. That is what makes this so damaging for her image. Chicago did not just replace a player. Chicago replaced the whole mood around the franchise. The team looks cleaner. The fit makes more sense. The build now clearly runs through Camila Cardoso. Not chaos, not stat chasing, not noise. Cardoso feels like a player you can actually construct around. Someone who plays inside structure. Someone who does not force every possession to orbit around her. And while Chicago was rebuilding its image in real time, Atlanta was left holding the other side of the gamble. Because now the pressure shifts to Angel Reese. In Chicago, she could blame the franchise. She could blame the roster. She could blame the market. But in Atlanta, that excuse starts disappearing. This is a team with Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray. There is talent there. There is spacing there. There are real scorers there. So if Atlanta struggles to attract more players, or if the chemistry gets weird, or if the same questions start following her, then it stops looking like bad luck and starts looking like a pattern. And that is exactly why the free agency angle matters so much. The source material frames Reese as frustrated that players were not lining up to join her in Atlanta. But if that is true, then the answer was already sitting right in front of her. Chicago, the place everyone said nobody wanted, suddenly became attractive the moment she was gone. That is not random. That is not coincidence. That is the league reading the room. Players talk, agents talk. Reputations travel faster than press releases. And if free agents were more comfortable joining Chicago without Angel Reese than joining Atlanta with her, that tells you more than any box score ever could. Now bring Caitlin Clark into this, because that comparison is what really twists the knife. Caitlin Clark walked into Indiana when the Fever were at the bottom, and the effect was immediate. The team got more dangerous. The spacing changed, the energy changed, the ceiling changed. Clark makes life easier for teammates. She bends the floor, she creates room, she raises the value of everyone around her. Angel Reese, based on how this transcript frames it, had the opposite effect in Chicago. One player became a foundation, the other became a problem teams wanted solved. And that is the brutal truth sitting underneath this entire story. Angel Reese leaves Chicago as a two-time All-Star, but Chicago's actions say they believed their future got better the moment she left. Then the rest of the league seemed to agree because talent started showing up right away. That is why this story is so big. It is not just that Angel Reese got traded, it is that Chicago moved on fast, and they looked relieved doing it.
Damn! An Angel Reese hit piece.
Sky has broken their silence about getting rid of
Angel Reese.
Where it says here, Sky players were sick of Angel Reese.
Man, oh man, this Yahoo Sports article on this whole Angel Reese debacle is insane. It is insane.
Angel Reese just got hit with the kind of report that can change everything. Because when a star leaves a team, you expect sadness, you expect frustration, you expect people to say the right things in public and move on. But that is not the word attached to Angel Reese right now. The word was relief.
Apparently, the teammates wanted nothing to do with her going forward. And to be honest, I already said that. You know, it was a lot of like anonymous sources in this which kind of be pushing me away, but being that I've been following this, I know there's certain things in here that it was obvious to see Ariel Atkins, regardless if they moved on from her too or not, she didn't want nothing to do with her. Courtney Vandersloot don't want nothing to do with her. Bro, it was a lot going on.
And if even part of these reports are true, then this is no longer just another WNBA drama cycle. This becomes something much bigger. It becomes a question about reputation, leadership, and why Caitlin Clark keeps gaining ground, while Angel Reese keeps getting dragged into the wrong kind of headlines. Because the story coming out of Chicago is brutal. According to the source material, reports tied to coverage around the Chicago Sky painted a picture of a locker room that was not just frustrated with Angel Reese, but completely done with her. Not annoyed, not divided, done.
Exposing the organization, couldn't stand her. Locker room cancer. The locker room now doing backflips that Angel Reese is gone. The whole double-double debacle. I thought we were done with this Angel Reese to the Atlanta Dream story, but it just gets crazier and crazier the more comes out. It seems like Jeff Pagliocca was the one packing her bags himself.
The language was consistent. There was talk of apprehension, no love lost, and most importantly, relief after she was moved. Think about how strong that sounds in professional sports. Teams do not usually talk that way after moving on from a player who was still putting up big counting stats and had already become a two-time All-Star so early in her career. That is what makes this feel different. This does not sound like a normal trade. It sounds like something behind the scenes had already broken, and that is why fans are now going back and rereading everything. Because once these reports came out, moments that may have looked small during the season suddenly started looking a lot bigger. Body language on the court, teammates seeming disconnected, public frustration, veterans having to respond to situations that should have stayed internal. Even Reese's own comments about the roster started getting viewed differently.
And my goodness, wow. Her teammates were not having her anymore. They were done with her. The Chicago Sky were done with her. It's unbelievable. Yahoo Sports, Chicago Sky have officially parted ways with Angel Reese, shipping the star forward to the Atlanta Dream in exchange first-round draft picks in 2027, 2028. This reporter predicts that the Sky will be long-term winners in that trade. Uh-oh. Just about anybody can find someone with a field goal percentage in the 30s. Ooh, boy. And pads the old rebounding stats as a result. I said Chicago Sky will win more games than they won last year this upcoming year.
In the source material, one of the key points is that she publicly made it clear that Chicago needed better players and that getting great players was non-negotiable. That kind of comment might sound competitive on the surface, but inside a locker room, it can land very differently. Because once teammates feel like they are being called out in public, trust starts disappearing fast. And in a professional environment, trust matters more than headlines. Talent alone is never enough. If the room stops believing in you, everything changes. That is what makes this story so dangerous for Angel Reese. On paper, her numbers gave people an easy defense. Rebounds, double-doubles, big visibility, strong media presence, a player who always seemed to be around the action. But the source material pushes a completely different argument. It says the production was not translating into real team value the way people assumed. There are repeated claims that the numbers often made Reese look better on the stat sheet without necessarily making the team better. The criticism goes even further, arguing that low efficiency and late-game stat chasing created a growing gap between perception and actual winning impact.
Angel Reese, from the moment she set foot in Chicago, made it clear she was bigger than the program. Made it clear she was bigger than the program. Made it clear it was her team. Made it clear. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the type of personality Angel Reese is. She made it clear she was larger. It was her team. Whereas
that is the heart of the issue. Because once a locker room starts believing that one player is playing for numbers instead of winning, resentment builds quickly. Teammates notice it, coaches notice it, opponents notice it, and eventually fans notice it too. So now the question is no longer whether Angel Reese had stats. The question is whether those stats were hiding a deeper problem. And Chicago's decision may have answered that for us. Because this is the part that really stands out. According to the source material, the Sky did not move Angel Reese in some massive superstar swap. They reportedly moved her for future first-round picks. That matters. It suggests that the organization may have been less interested in maximizing short-term talent and more interested in resetting the environment entirely. That is not a normal move for a player with Angel Reese's profile. A two-time All-Star being moved that early in her career is rare enough on its own, but doing it in a way that signals long-term reset instead of immediate basketball upgrade tells you this may have been a culture decision just as much as a basketball one. And once that idea lands, the Caitlin Clark comparison becomes impossible to avoid. Because while all of this was building around Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark was doing the exact opposite. No locker room leak, no reports of teammates feeling relieved, no stories about chemistry problems swallowing the team from the inside. Instead, Caitlin Clark kept getting attached to growth. Ticket sales, TV ratings, packed arenas, national attention, a sense that wherever she goes, the entire temperature around the league rises with her. The source material leans hard into that contrast, arguing that Clark is not just producing on the floor, but changing the business and momentum of the WNBA around her. And that is what makes this story feel bigger than one trade. Because this is not just Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark in the usual debate format. This is something deeper. This is one player being associated with internal tension, while the other is being associated with external growth. One is fighting a perception problem inside the building. The other is building value everywhere she goes. That difference matters, especially in a league growing this fast. When leagues expand, they do not just choose the most talked about player. They gravitate toward the player who lifts everything around them. The player who helps teammates. The player who creates buy-in. The player who brings in eyeballs, money, energy, and belief. And right now, the source material makes the argument that Caitlin Clark is winning that battle by a mile. That does not mean Angel Reese cannot recover, but it does mean Atlanta becomes one of the biggest tests of her career. Because now, she does not just need to put up numbers. She needs to break a pattern. She needs to show that Chicago was the exception, not the rule. She needs to prove that this narrative about tension, friction, and disruption is overblown. If Atlanta works, she gets a real chance to reset the conversation. But if the same issues follow her again, then people will stop calling it bad luck and start calling it who she is. And that is where this gets uncomfortable. The source material points to a broader pattern across multiple stops and asks the question very directly. At what point does repeated instability stop looking like coincidence and start looking like consistency? That is the question hanging over Angel Reese now. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark has pressure too. Huge pressure, bigger spotlight, higher expectations, more physical attention on the court, more noise around every move she makes. But the difference is what has not followed her. No reports of teammates wanting out, no sense of organizational relief, no repeated suggestion that the room works better without her. That is why this moment feels important, because maybe this leak did not expose literal hate toward Caitlin Clark in the simplest possible way. Maybe it exposed something even worse for Angel Reese. Maybe it exposed why the Clark comparison keeps getting more painful. Clark is being embraced as a player who expands the league. Reese is now being questioned as a player who may shrink the room around her. And in the modern WNBA, that gap could decide everything. This is why the story matters. Not because it is messy, not because it is dramatic, but because it may mark the point where the league's direction became impossible to ignore. One player keeps getting linked to growth, the other keeps getting linked to disruption. And if Atlanta does not change that, then this will not be remembered as one bad report. It will be remembered as the moment the entire conversation finally turned.